gentlemen, welcome. This is A Marine's Disquisition, and we're heard live around the world on Wind Talkers Radio Network and off the internet with Blog Talk Radio. We are the #1 show on Blog Talk and Wind Talkers Radio Network around the world. 183 stations are carrying this show live. And we just got the word that in the near future, we may be doing a simulcast on shortwave. So get ready. We're going to bring on board 17,000 shortwave listeners and 700 radio stations who pick up broadcasts on shortwave radio. All of a sudden, Wind Talkers got real popular this last weekend, and we want to thank Bob Chapman for making this the #1 show on Wind Talkers Radio Network and Blog Talk Radio. We want to thank Doug, Larissa, Bobby, Robert, Villana, and Chester, who's heading up the investigation on shortwave to put it all together. That is coming soon. With all of that said, ladies and gentlemen, we've got the man of the hour. His name is Mr. Bob Chapman. He is the provider of the internationalforecaster.com. That's the 3 W's, the internationalforecaster.com. We want to welcome Betty and Betty's Brigade in Southern California. We want to welcome the gang around the world in every climb and every place, from Sochi and Kazan, Russia, all the way down to Highway 8 on New Zealand's southern island, and all of those guys out there in the outback of Australia. Ladies and gentlemen, you want to call in today. This is the day you can call in and ask Mr. Bob Chapman questions about finance, learn something, take notes. The phone number for the call-in bridge, 347-308-8047. And yes, we got questions out the gazoo for Mr. Bob Chapman, but we're going to let him give his 2 cents, and then we'll come forth with all the questions you guys have been sending over to me this afternoon. God bless you all. Thank you very much. And Mr. Bob Chapman, it's your show.
Well, gold and silver hit new highs today. In fact, silver was up $1.83 an ounce, something like that. And gold was up almost $20. And again, you know, we have all these naysayers who keep on telling us, oh, it's going to correct, it's going to correct. And I tell everybody, no, it's not, keep on buying. And I've been right, and I'm happy about that, especially for you all who are long gold and silver coins and bullion and shares all over the world. And we got a long way to go. This is 6 years into this, and we've been very fortunate. And so having the listeners who have been able to participate. And I'm happy that I've been right. It makes me feel good. And with that, I think we should answer everybody's questions.
Well, we're going to start off with a sergeant who says, Mr. Chapman, you made me $150,000. I need to know how to repay.
Well, we don't take contributions from anybody for any reason at any time. And if you want to give money away, you find some families that are just really, and it's not their fault, that they're really broke, and help them a little. And I think that would be a good thing to do. The only people who pay us anything are the people who subscribe, and that's it.
The sergeant comes back in and says, we do subscribe, but we're not allowed to tell you what our name is because we might get in trouble out there.
Well, that's for sure. Anybody that gives up their name on the radio could jeopardize themselves, especially on this program where we got the Gestapo listening all the time.
He says he comes back and he says, look for a new purchase for a new year subscription for my father, myself, and my brother. I think at least I can do is buy a subscription for everybody.
Well, that's terrific. That's terrific. That's a fine way to do it. And if you come along some people who are not as fortunate as you are, you help them too.
He already came back and he says, Mr. Chapman is a man of my own caliber. I've already done that, and I think I can go out and with all of what's happened to me as a 23-year-old sergeant, just in the last 2 years, I think I can afford to go out there and help one or two more couples. He's a great man. Thank you, Mr. Chapman. God bless you.
Well, thank you.
We got a memo here that I've been ordered by Lenny. Ladies and gentlemen, you all know that last week I was at the Heartland seminar for Greg Evenson, and I met this gentleman about 5'5.5", maybe 5'6.5". If he was soaking wet with a beach towel that was king size sheet beach towel, he might weigh 140 pounds. He's about let's say 46 years old. His name's Lenny. He has a son by the name of John Michael. And John Michael sends emails to Mr. Bob Chapman and has done so since he was 12 years old.
That's right. And I know John Michael.
I've been told to tell Mr. Chapman that I have had the honor to meet Lenny, the father of John Michael, who has been corresponding with Mr. Chapman since he was 12. And that's only 4 years.
I thought he was 17. But anyway,
well, he is
not important.
He's 17. Okay, I thought he said 16, but that's okay. You've been properly informed, Mr. Chapman, that you have been said hello to by Lenny and John Michael.
Well, I thank them very much, and I'm glad they were attending. And we need more people to do that and get involved in what's going on out there. We're all Americans. No matter how we think politically, we got to save our country. It's very problematic what's going on, and I don't know where it's all going to end up. And we got to stick together and help one another.
Now, I got a couple other Marines here that are asking. Mr. Chapman's been corresponding with a young man that knows more about finances than we do. What's the deal here? Tell Mr. Chapman to inform us. We've got smart people out there that we don't know about.
Yeah, smart kids, homeschooled. He's homeschooled too, and he's been one of those young men that went out and he's doing what he's supposed to be doing, making his way through life and being a good citizen.
Amen. First question of the hour, from Betty in California. Mr. Chapman, the IMF is warning the United States to make a down payment on their debt. Where are they going to get the money to pay the debt?
They're going to go to you and make you pay taxes so they can do it. You know, it's funny. It's funny. Everybody was saying that they weren't going to have a deal regarding the extension of the debt. And I'm one of the few people who published and said, no, they can't do that. And they won't be able to steal any more money. So they'll vote for it. And they did.
Her second question comes in and says, Mr. Chapman, if you don't know, you and it's kind of hard for me not to believe that you do know. You don't know. Toyota has now closed all their plants in Europe. They closed their British plants, telling all the employees that they'd hire them back or they would be back in work in a couple of 3 weeks, maybe 4. But yesterday, the word is out that Toyota has closed, until further notice, all plants in Europe proper. And the Japanese are now downgrading their economy. This is going to be a ripple effect. How bad do you think it's going to get?
You know, you've asked me something I really can't answer because I don't think anybody knows. They were using just-in-time inventory, which means that they only kept on hand inventory that they thought they would need. In other words, if they thought they needed 1,000 units something, during previous times, 20, 25, 30 years ago, they might have 2,000 on hand, but not anymore. And so when you have an event like that and you can't supply, when 1,000 units are gone, it's over. And that's the position that they're in. The fallout from the radiation is so bad they may have to evacuate all of northern Japan. That's how bad it is. It's worse than Chernobyl. And I'm not an expert in that field. I've talked to experts today. That's what they tell me. And how long is this going to affect their production and exports? I don't know, but I would say 3 to 6 months. That seems like a reasonable estimate. They say it's going to cost $309 billion to fix their problem. I'm calling for $500 billion to $1 trillion. Where are they going to get the money? They'll probably sell more bonds to the postal savings system internally in Japan. They probably will float some yen-denominated bonds, probably $200 or $300 billion. And I don't think they'll have any problem doing either of those. The big problem is selling U.S. Treasuries. About 3 weeks ago, the group of 7 said they wanted to make the yen cheaper. And so they set about doing that. And they do that by selling yen and buying their own currency. So the yen went down from 76 to 80, 75 to 86. And it's trading in that top range, 85 or so, 84 and a half presently. But what they didn't tell you is that 6 of the 7 major nations were buying treasuries from the Japanese. We don't know how much. My guess is 50 billion. And I think they're going to have to try to sell 200 to 300 billion. So there's more to come. And I think that probably the U.S. Treasury, via the Federal Reserve, in all probability made a deal and said, look, you're covered. You're not going to lose any money on this. Because these bankers all work together. And so that's where I think they're headed financially. It's going to be devastating for Japan. Nobody deserves that. And I feel bad for them. They worked hard all their lives since the Second World War, and they just don't deserve it. But nobody does. And with that said, we'll move on to the next question.
Mr. Chapman, Goldman Sachs is telling their clients to sell the commodities. What's up with this?
Well, they also told them to sell gold, and silver as well. And why would they do that? They're short the market. They're betting they're going to go down, and that's why they're telling you that so you'll sell. They're criminals. Criminals in $5,000 suits. How do I know that? 29 years on Wall Street. Own my own firm. When I see a crook, I know him.
In the Blog Talk chat room, a gentleman comes in or a lady comes in and says, Mr. Chapman, back in 2008, I bought a large amount of AEM and GG stock. Soon after I purchased said it fell and has fallen. Was it just bad timing on my part, or do you think this stock will catch up and surpass what your recommendation was in 2008?
Well, first of all, they're two of the finest gold, silver mining companies in the world. They both pay dividends, which is highly unusual for gold and silver mining companies. Small dividend, maybe 1% or 1.5%. But anyway, they're terrific companies, particularly Agnico Eagle. And the reason they haven't performed well is that your government has been rigging the prices in the gold and silver shares by shorting them. And they're using hedge funds to do it, and they're shorting them naked. Now, sooner or later, they'll have to stop. But that's what's happened. You hold on to them. They're first-class companies.
I know a number of people that are buying their stock right now, guys, so you might want to think about it if you want to sell it. Call me. I'll buy. The powers to be in China are putting out the smile on their face and are looking to buy more Spanish debt. Spain is in debt. Portugal's in debt. Mr. Chapman, why is China buying the debt?
Well, first of all, they want to get rid of dollars. And they want to look like Mr. Good Guy. And they think that the paper that's offered, the bonds, are cheap. They're betting that they won't go bankrupt. I think they're wrong. I think there's a good chance they'll all go bankrupt, the 6 countries. But China's willing to take that risk. And so that's why they're buying them. Spain, the situation they're in is this. They don't have a lot of debt, but they have a housing market where prices have not been adjusted. And the housing prices in Spain will drop about 50% because they really haven't corrected that much, because people just refuse to sell, and the banks erroneously are carrying them on the books at much higher prices, double what they really were. And reality is going to set in, and there will be another drop in the housing market in Spain, and it'll be devastating. And everybody who lives there knows it's coming. There's been massive layoffs. Unemployment among people 30 or younger is close to 40%. Now, in the United States, it's 25% that they admit. So maybe the real figures are higher. So, we get the same problems that they have.
A Marine in London comes in and says, Mr. Chapman, I just heard on the BBC this afternoon as I was traveling in the embassy car to come to work that 20% of all young British men and women are out of work. 20% of all young men and women. These are people that are 18 to 25. And I see it every day as I travel into the embassy. Is there a correction coming?
Yes. It's going to get worse in England first. They're going to get hit hard again. And unemployment's higher than 20%. And the Brits never tell the truth. It's probably 30.
They get less.
And that's just the way it is, and it's going to get worse all over Europe. This is not going to go away in a hurry.
Betty comes in and she says, Mr. Chapman, I've heard you discuss the BRIC nations in the past. The word on the street here in San Diego amongst some of the officers at the Officers Club banquet Saturday night were making statements that foreign countries such that are members of the BRIC nations are on the march to bring the U.S. dollar down as a world reserve currency. Will this influx inflation and deflation and inflation worldwide?
Well, first of all, it's been known for a long time that those nations have wanted another reserve currency. And they've all been buying gold and silver as well. And if they have a new currency, they want it backed by gold. Yes, they have been critical of the dollar, and rightly so. I mean, China's got its own set of problems. So doesn't India and Russia and Brazil. I mean, Brazil's bonds are yielding 12.5%. Now, that doesn't incite faith in their economy. Even though their economy is booming, they still printed too much money. So the BRIC nations do want to change. They would like a combination of currencies. And the Chinese have been a buyer of SDRs, which I think is foolish. But that's their business. And so something has to give somewhere down the line. And as I've told you on the program before, I expect a big meeting like they've had before. Everything, all the currencies, devalued and revalued against one another, and a multilateral default and a new currency. And it could be the dollar if they've got the 25% in gold to back it. Or it could be a combination of 5 or 10 currencies in a unit, the value of which would change every day, but it's got to have backing with gold. And if I'm right, gold is easily going to sell at $6,000 to $8,000 an ounce. So if you got any money to invest, that's where you want to be.
Okay, guys, you got the warning. This is Drew Malone, Range III. We've got Mr. Bob Chapman and his wife Judy's out there in the background. She's the one that puts a lot of work into this, and we'll talk about her when we in the next hour. But we'll take a break, 3.5 minutes only. We'll look at your clock, 3.5 minutes max. We'll be right back with Mr. Bob Chapman, the international forecaster. Get the money, guys. Not the paper stuff. Take the paper and convert it to gold and silver. You hear it every Thursday with Mr. Bob Chapman, the international forecaster. My name is Drew Malone, Range III, and this is a Marines Disquisition. We're heard live around the world on Wind Talkers Radio Network and off the Internet with Blog Talk Radio. We apologize for the Blog Talk people not getting the commercials. There was a glitch out there coming in from Sochi, Russia. You heard only parts of the commercial when I did the thing with the beef. We appreciate it. We hope to have that little glitch taken care of in the next hour. The big deal is we have the man of the hour. His name is Bob Chapman. And Mr. Chapman is here with us, and we're going to start off the next segment here with a question right out of Blog Talk Radio. From their chat room, and it comes from Lana down in I think she's down in Texas. She came in and she says, well, we had the question here, Mr. Chapman. Welcome back to the show, and the question is: due to the situation in Japan, quarterly profit reports are surely going down. Would this news make the stock market of the United States go down?
It could very possibly. There's another factor to consider, 2 factors actually. Corporate earnings are not going to be good in the second half of the year, and Wall Street already knows that. And then we get this drag from Japan. How difficult it will prove to be remains to be seen. But then we have the equivalent of a QE3. How big will that be? How powerful will it be? Will the Fed keep on buying treasuries? The answer is probably yes, because no one else is going to buy them. And so you have these opposing forces. Can the market go down? Yes. Where did I think it could go to? Probably in the Dow 10,000. The Dow's around, well, recently it was 12,400. It's around 12,200 right now. And it could get down to that level, maybe even lower, but I think that's a conservative estimate. And then we have to take a second look at earnings, a second look at the Japan situation, and I'll look to see if the Fed is in fact buying the Treasury's bonds.
Betty from Pennsylvania comes in with a question. We got a lot of Bettys now, Mr. Chapman. Betty
Yes.
from Pennsylvania comes in. If we do have a basket of currencies, as you suggest, does this mean inflation for the United States, or will this stabilize the economy of the United States and stop the manipulation of gold and silver?
First of all, if the currency is backed by gold, they'll have to set a gold price at which gold will be counted in this backing. And all the currencies are going to have to be backed by gold, not just the ones that are in this unit, so to speak. Otherwise, they'll go down greatly in value. And currencies going down are okay, but you don't want them to plunge. And the reason why is, if you don't have natural resources in your country, take Japan as an example, and your currency plunges down, the cost of importing coal and oil and gold and silver and molybdenum and on and on and on, they go up in price. So it is inflationary if you do not have gold backing. Is something like that going to happen? I think so. But they may use the dollar again. They certainly can't use the euro. I think it's proven to be essentially a loser. And I'll just leave it at that. But as far as inflation ending, it could. And then gold would stabilize at a certain price. But it certainly won't be $1,400 an ounce. It'll be $6,000 or $8,000 an ounce. So if you're long gold now and silver now, and that happens, you're going to take a ride to the upside and make a lot more money than you have already. So it all depends on how they do it. If they don't back a new currency, a world reserve currency with gold, it'll never work. And everybody knows that.
Mr. Chapman, the price of gasoline has hit the equivalent of $8.39 a gallon here in Munich, Germany today.
Well, that's a good place not to live.
My question is, Libya sends 90% of their oil to Europe, not to the United States. Is this battle in Libya really about oil?
It's about oil and a lot of other things. And oil could go higher, especially if there's more trouble in the Middle East, which there could very well be. Libya is about oil and the distribution and who handles it. It's about the 4 aquifers under the country. It's about an independent central bank that just happens to have 143.8 tons of gold sitting in it. Gaddafi did not join AFRICOM, and that's one of the reasons why this happened. He has also before said he would like to nationalize the oil, put it in the company, and give shares to everybody in the country. And the British and the Dutch and the French and the Americans don't want that. And that's another reason why. If you look closely, you'll see that the man who is running the rebels, the head of the general staff, he has lived for the last 20 years in Virginia and is an employee of the Central Intelligence Agency. We know that American Special Forces have been on the ground there for over 3 months. and British troops have been there as well, and for about 6-7 weeks. The people who are being used are Al-Qaeda and Taliban. Now, that's the per capita, it's the largest recruiting area in all of the Muslim world for those types of people. Second is Saudi Arabia. So that's who is fighting Gaddafi. And, the U.S. wants him out of there. And if you've been watching closely, you found out that last week, NATO in their proficiency bombed the wrong troops. And I don't know how that happened, but I sure wouldn't want to be on the ground over there. I mean, these guys don't know who they're shooting at.
Lack of leadership, for sure.
For sure.
Mr. Chapman, Senator Carl Levine. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. I had a whiff of pollen blow through my window here. Where's that question, Chuck? Mr. Chapman, Senator Carl Levine issued a statement that from a report that he worked on, blaming Goldman Sachs as the culprit and the criminal behind the crisis that has caused this depression. My question, is anybody going to put these people on trial for accountability?
Probably not. They all belong to the Illuminati. They're all connected. They're loaded with money. They own the courts. They own the Congress. Ain't nothing going to happen. And that's how far America has fallen. And Levin is right. They're crooks. They're criminals. Only it took them about 20 years to catch up with me, who've been calling them that for that long.
I also discovered that Senator... He didn't come back in. Where's the senator? That Senator Coburn from Oklahoma came out and has advised constituents to find a way to bring Goldman Sachs to trial because they have bought and sold billions of dollars in high-risk mortgage-related investment, actively marketed poor-quality CDOs to clients around the world knowing that they were worthless, and then turned and bet against those same clients. And the mortgage industry has taken a nosedive in the United States. It is about to do the same in other countries. Does Mr. Chapman feel that Goldman Sachs is possibly behind some of this in other countries?
And the answer is yes. And J.P. Morgan Chase and Citigroup and Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Wachovia, there's a long list. And they should not be prosecuted civilly. They should be prosecuted criminally. And they should be fined hundreds of millions of dollars. Every dime that they made should be taken away from them. And they should go to jail for 25 or more years. And I've been writing about this for 3 years. I know who all the players are. I know what they did. And I've been publishing that for a long time. Finally, somebody in the Senate had enough guts to bring it forward. And Coburn should arrange for them to be arraigned on fraud charges.
I agree with that, 100%. Here's an IM from the Marine Corps chat room. Mr. Chapman, what's going on in Panama? There's a lot of Americans are moving out of Panama. And some are moving to Peru, others are moving to Costa Rica. Is Panama not a good place to be anymore?
I think a lot of them had offshore accounts, and the Panamanian government made a deal with the U.S. government and said, we're not going to allow you to do that anymore. So the people are packing up and leaving. And Costa Rica is a good country. They're under the control of the United States government, more or less. I used to live there, I know. And it's a nice place to live. There's more crime there than there was before. That's not good, but you're going to find crime anywhere today. And I think Peru might be a dicey place to go to because they got an election coming up, and the election may be won by a man who's a communist. And that's not good because you've got communists running Bolivia, Ecuador, Venezuela, and for all intents and purposes, Brazil. Argentina's got a fascist government. Uruguay, of all places, has a communist government. And I've lived in all these places, so I know what I'm talking about. And, in fact, you go to Uruguay, the American embassy is right near the golf course. And it looks like a porcupine. And I've been in on all kinds of counterintelligence operations, and one of them was working on intercept of one form or another. And they've got to be watching everybody in South America from that embassy. Chile has a good government, socialist, but not that bad. It's a long ways away. It's a beautiful country. They got wonderful wine, incidentally. And Nicaragua is a communist country. And so what do you got left? You got Chile, and you've got
Argentina?
No, Argentina has a fascist government, and the crime is unbelievable.
Okay.
You don't want to go there. People get robbed right in the airport. Come in on a plane and they rob you. Believe me, I've seen it happen. And then you got Mexico. Central Mexico is very good. Lots of law and order, good economy, nice people. It's a good place to live, as is Costa Rica, and as is Chile. So those are the three Latin American destinations I think are the best. I left Colombia out because it's almost totally controlled by the United States government. And if you don't mind that, well, you can live there.
I have a doctor coming in here and asking, what about Belize?
Belize is okay. Very small country. I think the only real drawback in Belize is that there's nothing to do. You know, I've lived in places like Belize. I never lived in Belize, but places like it. Like I lived in the Bahamas. And it gets really boring. And so if you don't mind sitting around doing nothing most of the time, then it's okay for you. But I got to be someplace where there's something to do.
No golf course?
Oh, they all got golf courses. And I got to let you in a little secret. On Sunday, I hit a 3-wood, 250 yards on a par 4, about 10 feet from the pin, and dropped the putt for a 3 on a par 4. Right. I was very proud of that.
I bet. You had to say that. Betty comes in and says, "How did Judy do?"
She did okay, but nothing spectacular.
Then the doc comes back in and he says, "Well, if there's nothing to do, what about those of us that could live there and travel out of Belize? Can you travel in and out of Belize and go back and forth and work in other places? Like I work in several countries in South America."
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. You can even become a citizen. It's not difficult.
That's good. That's good.
But Belize is a good place to live. I didn't think of it because it's so small. Mm-hmm. And they speak English there, which is attractive to people who are not Spanish speakers.
Hey, guys, you got questions? The chat room is open for the phone calls, 347-308-8047. Call in. I haven't seen any questions in the chat room, or Larissa hasn't been able to catch any. So if you've got any questions, other than asking about living in Montana and Wyoming or Idaho, now those of us up here, we already know those aren't good places because TSA is everywhere, okay? Mr. Chapman, here's a question from the Marine Corps chat room. TSA is basically a communist KGB, out-of-control Nazi organization here in the United States. What are they doing in other countries, since you live in South America, about checking people?
Like it used to be in the old days. Just normal checking. They don't, strip search people or feel them up or anything like that. Whether it's domestic or national flights, they just don't do it. There's a little bit more humanity in Latin America, and respect. Respect is the key word.
I have a number of people saying, thank you, Mr. Chapman, for your input about the countries in South America. You just made up my mind not to go to Uruguay. Wow,
yeah, it's a pretty country, and it's a nice place. It's just a shame they have that government. They have some terrific soccer teams there. I happen to be a soccer fan, and some great players, and of course they have casinos there. And if you move up the coast, you can get accommodations inexpensively. They got wonderful wines. It's really a country that is a farming country for the most part. They raise a lot of vegetables and things like that. And it's a nice place to live. It's just unfortunate. And maybe that'll change in the next election. I don't know.
I'll go back to the Blog Talk chat room. I personally feel we're under inflation right now, ladies and gentlemen. That's my personal viewpoint. I wanted to get that 2 cents out there up front. You've heard me do my rants about the cost of canned goods going from 4 cans for $1 just 4 years ago to now it's 5 cans for $3. From 4 cans for $1 to 5 cans for $3. Now, if that's not inflation, I don't know what inflation is. I've watched bread go from 90 cents a loaf of bread 5 years ago to $3.79 just the other day. I've watched 2-liter Cokes go from 49 cents to $1.50. So if that's not inflation, I don't know what inflation is. So the question to Mr. Chapman from the Blog Talk chat room is, when do you think inflation will be here, and how bad do you think it's going to get?
Well, we're looking at about 8.5%, maybe as much as 10% right now, because John Williams just came out with new 10% figures. So I'll go with John. He's the best. So we get 10%. I predicted earlier in the year 14% for the year. Maybe I'm conservative. Next year, with QE2 and Stimulus 2 going through the economy, you got to be looking at 25-30%. And
would you call that?
If
would
they
you call
do
that
QE3
next year?
The following year.
The following
2013.
Year.
That's when QE3 will hit if we have it, and I'm sure we'll have it. And that'll take it up over 50%, and that will be hyperinflation. Not a pretty story.
No, it's not.
And what's interesting, right now, Canada and Mexico, America's neighbors, they're doing terrific. Both currencies are going up versus the dollar. Their inflation's about 3.7 to 4%. Their growth last year and this year will be about 4.5%, which is really terrific. And they haven't used any stimulus, and they've both raised taxes. So there are places that are not suffering as much as Americans are.
Mr. Chapman, from the girl, one of the girls at Betty's Brigade, can Mr. Chapman answer the question why the Republicans are so silent on the falling dollar?
Well, I think that any news that's bad is bad for all of them. So they keep their mouths shut like it wasn't happening. They don't want to know. And, most of them are attorneys, and they don't know a lot about business and finance. They're just like doctors. I mean, it's not their place to know. They're doctors. They're attorneys. I mean, the average guy that builds cabinets, does he know about high finance? Of course he doesn't. Well, neither do the other guys.
Mr. Chapman, you mentioned living in the central part of the central part of Mexico as a stable economy. What about all the drug deals and the murders that's going on in Mexico? The United States is putting out warnings finally about the massive amount of murder that's going on, even in the capital of Mexico City.
Well, most of the crime is committed along the border in Sinaloa, which is where Culiacan is, and the home of the Sinaloa cartel. I know lots about it. I used to live there. And, in fact, when I lived there, I was surrounded by drug dealers. But I chose to live there for certain reasons. And that includes Mazatlan as well, unfortunately, because it's part of Sinaloa. Down in Guerrero, which is where Acapulco is, they grow a lot of heroin, opium, and marijuana, and so there's lots of violence there as well. There's a smattering of violence in Campeche and Cancun, but not much. And in Mexico City, a moderate amount, considering there's 30 million people there. Occasionally, Monterrey has more crime than they would like, and that's fairly close to the U.S. border. But central Mexico is Guadalajara and the area radius of 150 miles, which includes Chapala, Ajijic, San Miguel de Allende, and many other very nice cities. And the crime rates are very low. Guadalajara has 8 million people, and it's a beautiful city, and there's a lot of money there.
Mr. Chapman, you made a comment about silver and gold going up. I've read articles from a Mr. Bob Moriarty, who says that he wrote recently that silver was getting top-heavy, or as he called it, toppy. And it's at a temporary top at the present time. People who bought silver at $4 an ounce are strong on silver, but those people that are buying silver now are weak. Do you feel that silver is going to collapse the way Mr. Moriarty thinks it is?
Well, you're wrong and he's wrong. And silver went up $1.83 today. Moriarty's been wrong 4 times on silver. He's probably got one of the foulest mouths I've ever heard from people. He has absolutely no background in gold and silver, other than he's been investing in mines and touting people on mines that he has interest in. And so I allot no importance to what he says whatsoever. And he has a site called 321 Gold, and he's been wrong over and over and over again. So disregard what he's got to say.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's a fact, 100%. Mr. Chapman, we would like to tell Judy hello. Thank you very much for all that she's done. And, of course, we'd like to have you back again next week.
Well, of course. Why would I break the string after all these years?
Larissa, she says you may have an echo, Mr. Chapman, but she would like for you to stay on for about 20 seconds, 35 seconds, because she had this song picked out for for the break, and you didn't hear it. She's got it set up to play. So if you could hang on for 30 seconds while we go off to the top of the hour break, we'd appreciate it. And the gang at Wind Talkers sends their love, their respect, and their protection. God bless you, sir.
Well, thank you very much.